Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, decided to record this video on certain recent events that have been occurring in regards to my position on these events and that sort of stuff. I'm going to be recording this video with a web camera, so you can finally see what I look like. And yeah, if you don't necessarily like this camera, because like the video quality is like going to be absolute trash, because I'm using like an old Xbox, just let me know. We can go back to the old campfire and just the sound of my voice and polishing the audio quality. But I figured I'd just get this quick video out there and see how people respond to it. And because I had a few things to say on a particular topic, and that topic is has to do with anonymity. And there's this concept that people have where if somebody is anonymous and you essentially publish their information, that's what's known as doxing. And it seems that it's sort of like this absolute thing that one should never do online on the internet because it's bad. But nobody's really like looked into the sort of facets on why we shouldn't be putting people's information out there. Like for me personally, my choice was to put my face and my name out there. And the reason I decided to do this is because this makes me own what I have to say. In life, if I say something on Twitter, I know that it can be tracked back to me personally. Not everybody decides to do this, and it happens to be a matter of choice. And there are some ethics and moral that come into play with that, because, for instance, if you look at somebody from Saudi Arabia who is an atheist and would like to talk about atheism and sort of explore that particular concept, anonymity is a requirement to them, to the point where if they lose that anonymity, that could lead to consequences, and very serious consequences that can threaten their lives. And that same argument can be made from various different perspectives, depending on certain opinions that one might necessarily hold that might be controversial. But that's sort of like the extreme that I see. It being absolutely crucial and critical in order to protect somebody's anonymity, in order to keep them from harm or their loved ones from harm. Now, an individual who goes by the name of Donga Saw, his information was recently released. And my reaction to this was entirely different. And I'll give you some backstory on the guy, because Donga Saw is not a person that I really enjoy having around at all. I think he's a despicable human being. I think he's a fucking liar. And I think he's a galactic piece of shit. So when his identity gets put out there, there may well be a bias there that's pushing me towards motivated reasoning in order to try to excuse that the fact that his information was put out there. And that's something that I have to recognize, and that's something I have to put to the forefront, so that individuals who are out there who have a more sort of level-headed approach might be able to give their unbiased perspective in this matter. So his information was released, and here's the story behind me in Donga Saw. So at a certain point in time, I decided to make a video, and that was regarding Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin's approach to apologetics in Charlottesville. And I noticed that he had certain sympathies regarding the people in Charlottesville, which I pointed out and I brought to the forefront. And I had my entire argument laid out, and instead of I was invited onto a stream by this guy by the name of Failure Terminated, another internet role player out there, and I was sort of asked to come on and have a discussion, a little chat. And what ended up happening is this Donga Saw guy was there, and he proceeded to fucking berate me for a period of 2 hours, not addressing like any of the points of the arguments. I don't think like anybody looked into the video that I actually made. And yeah, he was essentially just like bitching me out. And you had Failure Terminated, who was like muting me the whole time, to the point like on his own channel, somebody pointed out, it's like, why don't you just let the guy talk? And Failure's response to that was like, well, what he was saying was stupid. So at that point in time, that's when I sort of like lost interest in this whole debating shit, because it seemed completely and totally self-defeating to go on to other people's channels if they're just not going to listen to what you have to say. Because the way I approach situations is when I'm presented with an idea that's in direct conflict with something that I believe, I try to weigh that in regards to how valid a person's argument is. And if I happen to be wrong, I just say, you know what? On this particular topic, I was wrong. And I evolve my position, and therefore I evolve as a human being. But this is not the way that people like Failure Terminated and Donga Saw and all of them operate. They want to make you look bad. And by making you look bad, that makes your argument look bad, and essentially makes them get the big W. So after that, the next morning, I go on, and then, you know, I noticed that Failure Terminated had posted a message and saying that, like, you know, the reason we were muting him was because what he was saying was stupid. And I said, you know what? I'm done with the fucking niceties at this point. I really don't care. If you're going to think what I have to say is stupid, I'm just going to treat your opinions with the exact same veracity. And, you know, a lot of these opinions that people like that hold in any event aren't based in reality. So I'm really not losing much sleep over that particular decision. And this goes to anybody running in that particular circle. Like, that's essentially the point where I decided, you know what, I'm going to make my own videos and I'll explain my position. And when you decide to refute it, I'm just going to mock you for the idiot that you are, because that's what you decided to do to me. And I don't see from their perspective how I could ever get any informed opinions, especially when their entire paradigm is not based in fact. It's like you look at anytime they're presenting with facts and figures and that sort of thing, they'll just dismiss it. It's like, oh, here's a court case from the Supreme Court. I don't care. Okay. Well, I guess you know better than the Supreme Court then? So this brings us to Donga Saw. During that whole thing, he decided to fucking berate me for like a period of 2 hours. And I put up with it. I was nice. I turned the other cheek more than enough times. But at a certain point in time after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm done with this dude. He started like, you know, posting a bunch of childish fucking GIFs and stuff like that. So I just blocked his fucking ass on Twitter until he became, you know, relevant enough to come up in discussion enough times that I had to, like, you know, unmute him so that he could respond to what I was saying. I didn't think it was fair for me to talk shit about somebody if they're not able to see or reply to it. So I did that. And eventually we get to this point where his private information in regards to his name and his face was released, which I found absolutely hilarious, because this guy had been threatening other people with violence, to the point where he'd say, "Oh, I'm going to fuck start you with my fist. No, I'm going to fuck start your face with my fist. I'll fuck you and make you love me," and all that sort of shit. And like, to me, having dealt with enough people, like, we don't talk to each other like that. Not in the circles that I frequent. I consider that threatening behavior, and I don't roll the dice when it comes to that kind of crap. So, yeah, his information's released and his photo's released, and it turns out he's just like this spaghetti arm, fucking Spicoli looking motherfucker with like a pee stain on his pajama pants, and he's just so fucking pathetic. It's hilarious. I'm just laughing thinking about it. But I digress. So back to the anonymity thing. See, for somebody like Tonka to do stuff like that, to start threatening people behind like this shell or this shield of anonymity, it's a lot different than somebody who's like, you know, over in Saudi Arabia, who isn't talking shit to anybody and is just trying to express his ideas without getting murdered by his government. So that's why I think it's important to look at things with a case-by-case basis, in order to, you know, weigh in the severity of the act of releasing somebody's information, their face, and that sort of stuff. Because I don't think the slight can be evaluated in the same way. And I'm sort of reminded of the event where, no bullshit, he was over at VidCon, and somebody had taken a picture of them and posted it online, and their whole argument was essentially, you know, how they didn't release his anonymity to the public because he already had a YouTube channel. Well, Donga Saw was this guy who already had a wrestling career and did a bunch of podcasts and all of that sort of shit. This can be like easily found, and people were able to connect the dots like they did with No Bullshit. And then there's this idea that Donga Saw didn't want to release his information because he wanted to protect his family. Apparently this is something that he said a whole bunch of different times, yet Donga Saw had absolutely no problems in terms of giving information about the very thing he's supposedly trying to protect. See, that's why I think he's full of shit. Because, look, if I'm in a position where I want to defend my family, okay, and it's the same approach online, on Twitter, that I have with my family, that anybody would have for their family. I'm not going to tell them, you know, where these people might necessarily live, how many properties I own, if they live in those particular properties. This is stuff that Tonka was sort of spewing out. And he was using his victimization as some sort of a shield. And he's using his family as kind of like ammunition to that goal. He doesn't care about the fact that his family might necessarily be in quote-unquote danger now. Because otherwise he wouldn't be publishing information about potential whereabouts of his family members. The only reason this is a problem to a person like Donga Saw, it's because he's been made a fucking laughingstock, and for good reason. God, like... But ultimately, if I would have been given Donga Saw's information in regards to who he was as a wrestler and his image would I have released that information personally? I don't think so. I'd have to say no. Like, as much of a fucking shitheel he is, like, that's not something I would do personally. Because I don't know. I don't think it's my call to say, because I look at anonymity like a driver's license, right? I think that everybody should have the ability to have anonymity online, but I don't think it should be something that is maintained as this, sort of holy crucible that people can hide behind, especially if they're being, giant fucking tools to everybody and threatening people with violence. But still, like, that as much as I fucking hate this guy, like, personally, I would not have released this information. Now, for people who do release information in this case, like, again, like, it's not really a huge slight, in my opinion, because essentially you're just exposing a galactic piece of shit, and everybody's having a good laugh over it. So, like, what am I going to complain about? How dare you bring up somebody who was a public figure that no longer is a public figure and wants to remain anonymous and is lying about the fact that, he gives a shit about his family when he's releasing personal information about the family he's supposedly protecting? Like, no, I'm not going to, go out of my way and just sort of demonize people for that particular reason. If it was the guy over in Saudi Arabia, you're goddamn fucking right. I'd be livid. And like, again, this came up on the internet, surprisingly enough. There was an incident where somebody is living in one of these places, is an atheist, and had their information just sort of kind of put out there. At least enough to put two and two together and put the person's life in danger. It's, oh, God. What am I doing on this fucking platform? Like, Jesus, people are fucking nuts. I actually question myself sometimes, because I think there's a really, and just as a side note, there's a problem with spending so much time online, and you get to meet so many socially stunted people that it's insane. It's like night and day from where I was to, like, people that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis now. It's like, go out there. It's nice. It's sunny. Go to a bar. Start a conversation with somebody. If you're lonely, get yourself out there. Don't watch this crap. And if you're going to watch this crap and you're going to watch the crap that I'm putting out, do it in moderation. Because there's a lot of good shows out there. Anyways. So, yeah. Fucking Donga Saw. Jesus Christ. What are we gonna do with this guy? So, yeah. That's the whole thing with anonymity from my take. TLDR version is, it's complicated. I think it's important to maintain anonymity on the internet, but I don't think that it's something that should be demonized across the board for any slight, reason whatsoever. It's like, if it's somebody like Tonka, I really don't care. Like, I've been having far too much fun making fun of the fucker, just because of the amount of, like, fucking venom the guy just puts out, and he's like always angry and threatening people's lives, and so lying about people and whole shit like that. He's like a really, really, really disingenuous piece of crap. But again, regardless of that, I would not have published his information given the chance. If I had, like, absolutely any information whatsoever that could even give a remote sense of his location, his face, or his name, I wouldn't do that. That's just my personal call. because it's like, I'm not the person who gives out licenses of anonymity to people. I don't know, like, what circles they've traveled. I don't know if they're, like, you know, trying to avoid somebody, if somebody threatened them in the past or something like that. With Tonka, there's a chance that might be true. You might have, like, you know, talked shit to some guy, and he was a lot crazier than he was, and now he knows where the guy is. Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, what are the consequences of this? You got to weigh that in. But again, on its own, in a vacuum like that, it's like, who's the guy whose ethics and morality are at their worst here? You know? And you could say, like, I can't really look at it that way, because both situations I can see an argument against. And I can definitely see that argument. So I don't know. Like, I've seen, you know, every kind of explanation out this, and I think it's just, it depends on the situation. It depends on what this guy is doing to you, and it depends on the consequences of you releasing this guy's information like that. And there's also a sense of responsibility for your own anonymity. I mean, if you're going out there and you're just being a giant fucking douchebag and you're threatening people with violence left, right, and center, eventually, especially like if you had a public life before, so people are going to connect the dots to that shit. But I don't think he's genuine in his sort of victimhood in this case, in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Like, at all. I don't trust that fucker for a second. See, that's why I'm conflicted, because, like, I have this informed opinion of the guy, and my bullshit detector just goes off every time the guy fucking speaks. But then again, I wouldn't have published his information. So that's the way it goes. And, you know, I'm not going to go out of my way to demonize people who have. It's like the James Damore case. It's like, I could entirely see why anybody would decide to fire James Damore, because his work ethic was absolute fucking horseshit, the way he approached the situation. But had I been his boss, had I had to make that call, I wouldn't have fired him. Even though I disagreed with the way he approached certain situations. That's just the kind of guy that I am. But then again, you know, I'm not a guy who's been in a position to have threats to my personhood be multiplied by, you know, the number of followers certain people have. I didn't have my family threatened. I didn't have, like, all this other shit happen to them. So that's another thing that doesn't go into consideration on why I should or should not be exposing another person. And I think in order for me to make any sort of judgment on either side, like, should I or should I not revoke this person's anonymity, or should another person, or should they not revoke another person's anonymity? It's too complicated a scenario in order for me to make a valid judgment call. So things just played out the way they did, and, you know, I got to make fun of Donga Saw, and really, that's all that matters to me. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.